Today is all about plumbing. Let's not be intimidated. I'm telling you, it is very easy. Stay tuned to the end and you will know how to plumb. You will know every single component you're going to need for your entire plumbing system for your bus or van or whatever you're watching this video for, and you'll be confident enough to do it yourself, because I'm telling you guys, it is so easy. It's literally probably one of the easiest things you'll do for your whole entire bus build. So the first tool that we use, or that I use at least, for my plumbing is this Pex Clamp Tool. It's a very simple tool to use. I'll explain how to use it in a second. The second one is a pipe cutter, and so that's going to cut all your pecs. Next one, which is the main fitting that we're going to be using, is a Pex fitting. And these come in straights, right angles, T's, 45s, or whatever. The next part of this is our clamp, and I'll show you that in 1 second. And here's an example of some Pex piping. You can kind of see an example of how this is all put together from this shot. And I'll also demonstrate how to actually accomplish something like this and complete the clamps. Sometimes it's necessary to use something called a SharkBite. And a SharkBite is a fitting that quite simply just pushes on to your pecs. It's the simplest way to do your plumbing, and you can see I used it here on this. And this is a nice fitting for certain different things that you might need. But for example, this one fitting right here is about almost $10. This one is close to 12 bucks. And so every time you do, see one of these right angles, if you were to do a right angle SharkBite, they're about $6 to $8 a piece, where these are, you can buy a pack of 100 of them for like 10 bucks or something really inexpensive. And this tool right here is about $30, and it comes with a cutter. So all this is listed in the Amazon links below. So first, guys, we're going to demonstrate the SharkBite, because these are removable. So say you need to do something that you might have to change later, you're going to want to use a SharkBite, or else you're going to have to cut your pipe and redo the fitting. So quite simply, a SharkBite just pushes right on, and you'll feel it push, boom. And so it pushes right in there, and then you can feel it click. And now the nice thing about SharkBites, you can get this little SharkBite tool, put it on your pipe like such, and then with a good amount of pressure, you push down and it will release the pipe. A little hard to show it because I have to have a good grip on it. So that's the nice thing about SharkBites, is that it will go on, you just push it on and it creates a watertight seal, and it can be removed with a tool. Where all of your other plumbing ways that you connect your pecs, there's no way to actually disconnect them very easily, at least, so you got to cut it. Now for your clamp style, which is what I use in the whole entire bus, you put the clamp onto the pecs, quite simply like this. Get your fitting, and this is the straight fitting. You just squeeze that fitting inside of there. Sometimes you really got to crank it in there, okay? And so it will automatically stop where it's supposed to go. You can see those two little flanges. Now, the nice thing about the plastic Pex fittings is that they might be a little bit more brittle. I've never had an issue with them. Some people are like, oh, why don't you use brass? It's like, first off, it's cheaper. I've never ever had an issue with one of these breaking. Never. So, to get back to the point, they also have these little nice flanges that tell you exactly where your clamp needs to be. So they're a little bit easier to use and less expensive. Now, with our clamp tool, you can see right inside of there's a mouth. Let's see if I can get focused. See that mouth right on the tool? I'll try to get a good angle of this. The mouth goes into the tool, or into the clamp, like such. And then you just tighten it down, tighten it down, tighten it down. And once it gets tight enough, you can actually use one hand and it'll hold the whole thing. And so you keep tightening, Keep tightening, keep tightening, keep tightening, and this light will turn blue when it's finally done. See that? So this kind of lets me know, hey, you're at the right tightness. Let that go, turn this lever, and it releases it. So now right here we have made a watertight seal on our Pex. It's very, very easy to do, guys. Okay guys, so now that you know a little bit on how to plumb, it's just going to take some practice. Do what I did, take that clamp tool, take your clamps, and just practice on a couple. And you'll realize it's pretty dang easy. Okay, so now the next part that we're going to talk about is all the components to our plumbing system. Now, this can get a little confusing for some people, but I'm telling you guys it's actually very simple. It's only made up of a few things. So, we're going to start on the outside, and here's a clip that I took when I was originally doing the plumbing for the bus. You know, a little tip that we're deciding to do in our bus. Our first one, we just had one of these, and this has a city pressure on right here where you screw a hose in and just gives pressure to all your plumbing, and then a gravity fill right here. This little cap opens up, and that's where you usually fill your tanks. But what we're doing is a little different. We are going to have the city pressure fill our tanks. And this is gonna be our vent. And then we're still gonna have city pressure, but it's gonna be through this guy. And the reason why we're doing this way and we're having our fill be out of our city pressure is because in our last bus, the gravity fill worked, but it was just a pain in the butt. I mean, water would have to spew out of it every once in a while. There's always be water dripping. It wasn't as efficient. There wasn't always enough pressure to push the water up through the hose into the tank before. That's just depending on what kind of water spigot we're using. So we decided to have our fill be the city pressure, the gravity feed be the vent line, which it still can fill, and then this will be our city pressure water. So when we're just plugged up to a hose, say at an RV park or something like that, someone's house, we don't want to use our tanks, we could just put a hose right into the bus and that would supply pressure to all of our lines. And now before I head into actually connecting everything up, let me go ahead and explain what each component does. First off, you're going to have a water pump. There needs to be some way from your tanks to pressurize your lines so when you turn on your faucet, there's actually good water pressure. So that is a 12-volt water pump. All these products that I'm talking about, there are affiliate links in the description below, so if you use them, awesome. If you don't like the products they use, just go find your own. There's many different options out there. These were the ones that I knew were gonna meet our needs for the best. And right before that water pump is a screen filter. So if you have any big contaminants inside of your tank, like say you had to drill a hole to install a water tank monitor, or maybe there's just some plastic left over from the manufacturer or whatever, this screen is going to catch all of that debris and stop it from entering your water pump, which could potentially damage it. So make sure you install one of those for sure. It will save your water pump. Then directly right after the water pump is something called a accumulator tank. An accumulator tank, what that does is that the water pump gives pressure to the accumulator tank, and that accumulator tank holds the pressure and puts it through the rest of the system. And so the reason why that's helpful is because the water pump is only pressurizing the accumulator tank, so it's not working as hard, nor does it have to come on for every single time that you just go psh with some water. What an accumulator tank does is it just holds pressure. The water pump feeds pressure to the accumulator tank, and then the accumulator tank pushes that pressure throughout the rest of your plumbing system. So for instance, it will make it a lot quieter because the water pump's not working nearly as hard. And every time you turn your water spigot on, like just, say you just go psh, psh, the accumulator tank will take care of that pressure without the pump even having to run. So that your water pump is running less and it's not running as hard, so it will last longer and it's a lot quieter. And it's only 40 bucks. It's so worth it, especially if your plumbing system is going to be inside like ours, because we wanted to make our bus all weather. One of the other components that we have is a water drain valve. So if for some reason we ever needed to drain our 200 gallons of water, that would be a lot of water running through the water pump if we did not have such a thing. So it's like a two-way valve, very simple, but if you ever need to drain your tanks, it's really important. And if you have a electric hot water heater like we do, which is what we'll talk about now, it needs to be drained. There's a little valve on the top that when it gets hot, the pressure rises up and it relieves that extra pressure through a relief valve, just like every other hot water tank does in your house. But if you don't know, then you don't know. So this has a little release valve, and that just goes and it just drips on the bottom side of the bus. Now, as far as connecting everything, well, let's move over to our handy dandy graph paper, and I'm going to draw everything out for you, and hopefully you can have an idea of how everything connects. Okay guys, so as a reference here, this permanent marker is going to be our cold water, since that's most of the plumbing that you're going to do is cold water, especially where all your tanks are. The blue pen is going to be, like our water tank, right, or our accumulator and water pump. You'll see what I'm talking about here soon. Looks like a little guy with glasses. Smiley face. Okay guys, so here is all of our components. I'm going to give you a quick walkthrough. This right here is our external fill, okay, and I'll explain that in a second. And here in our system, this is what we did. This is our city pressure from the outside of the bus. This is where we will fill and provide water to our whole entire system, okay? Now we're moving to our water tank, and this will feed the rest of the system. And I'm gonna go over how to connect all of this here in a second. I just laid out all the components and we're gonna draw it out together, all right? Now we have our water pump filter, then we have our water pump, and then after our water pump, we have our accumulator tank. And then after the accumulator tank, we have a T, which this is where our city pressure connects. I'll show you that here in a second. And then the rest of the system goes off of this right here, down to our hot water tank, out the rest of the plumbing system for your sink, shower, everything. These are all the components that you're going to need to make your plumbing system work. This permanent marker is going to be where all of the cold water is flowing. On your water tank, guys, you're going to have 4 fittings. You're going to have one big one that's about a 1-inch fitting. That is typically to run a wide tube to this part of the external to use a gravity fill. Most RVs and stuff are set up to do a gravity fill. We did not do that in our bus because our last bus we did a gravity fill and it would take forever to fill a tank and it was just a pain. So what we did is we took the city pressure, that this is typically for your city pressure, and we plumb that directly in to the top of the tank in a 1/2-inch fitting. So now we are filling our tanks from the city pressure, so we have full pressure going into the tanks. They fill a lot faster and it's more efficient. There's not water spraying out everywhere, which happens on a gravity fill. Now next, we use our big gravity fill as a vent. So now this right here is our vent. And the reason why you need a vent is because when you're filling your tanks, when water is coming in and it's filling up, the air has to go somewhere or else your tanks will expand and burst, like literally explode. So that's why you need a vent. And so now this big gravity fill is our vent. I'm going to talk about the city pressure later on. We're going to move to the rest of the system, okay? Now starting with these 2 fittings, these are 1/2-inch threaded fittings where you screw in your fittings to them with some plumbing tape so they don't leak. Now starting on this side, this is the shortest one. If we ever need to drain our tanks, this is how we would do it. We have some PEX piping running to a shutoff valve, and then this shutoff valve is going down out the bottom of the bus. So if we ever need to drain our tanks, we can flip this valve this way and it will open up the valve and the water will drain out. Well, I did my little teardrop backwards, but you can see that. So that's how we would drain our tanks. And the reason why you want to have a valve to drain your tanks is because otherwise you would have to use your water pump to pump all the water out. And that's a lot of water most of the time to pump out. and it's not really good for your water pump to do that. So now working our way to what's actually going to feed our plumbing system. On the bottom here, and you need and want your main out of your tank, your main water out on your tank to be on the bottom, so as it empties, you're still getting water. If you put it on the top, as soon as it gets below it, it won't be able to capture any water. Seems simple, but worth noting. So we're gonna run our PEX out, and here's gonna be a right angle, but of course your system's gonna be different, however you configure it. And now this PEX is going directly into our water filter. Now from there, the filter is going directly into your water pump. And this is what is running on boom, 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 boom to create water pressure through the rest of your system. And then next, you plumb into a accumulator tank, which this is optional, but, oops, sorry. But I'm telling you guys, it's well worth it. Water pumps can be really noisy, but the accumulator tank makes them super, super quiet because they're not working as hard. All they're doing is providing pressure to this tank, and the tank is providing pressure to the rest of the whole system. Okay, so now from our accumulator tank, we are moving to our T right here. Okay, and this is where your city pressure finally joins your system. The city pressure connect is coming right up over here into the top of this T. Okay, so the reason why your city pressure needs to come after the rest of your pressure system is because if your city pressure was joined too early, like before your pump, it will burn your pump out. Everything that creates pressure inside of your lines from your tank needs to come before your city pressure. And so very simply, you just add a T and join the city pressure after the rest of this. And what that does is that it keeps pressure on these lines right here because everything is after it. So your city pressure is then just providing pressure. It can't go this way because it's already pressurized. So now it feeds out this way. Okay, and now both of your systems are now providing pressure to this one line here. And that's how you're gonna join everything together. Now after this, you're gonna have a hot water heater. We chose to do an electric hot water heater rather than a propane. We just wanted less propane. It's easier to plumb in. I don't have a lot of experience with, wanting to vent and have this big kind of propane water heater. And plus we have a huge solar system. So the electric hot water heater is no problem for us. We don't have to be plugged in to use it. We just turn it on during the day when we have a ton of sun. There are 3 valves on a tank. And we use a Bosch hot water heater. There's 3 valves. This is your cold inlet. So here, I'll draw this in blue right here. You might be able to pick it up. And I don't have a red pen, but this is your hot outlet. Okay? So cold, hot. So you know what, guys? I forgot to mention something. Right after this part of your system where you join and now all your lines are pressurized either from your water pump or your city pressure, you're going to bring your PEX piping down and you're going to have another T. Okay? I forgot to add this one. My bad, but you guys will get the point. You're gonna have another T that comes off of this. So now this T right here, this is gonna be your cold water going to the rest of your system. So this one just goes on and goes on to your sink and everything. Your cold water just goes out from here. You plumb in everything else and that's done. Your cold water is done. Now your hot water, the cold line has to come out and has to connect to the fittings on the hot water heater. And there's 3 fittings on a hot water heater. I'll just draw the other one here, although that's not really where it's at, but just for demonstration. You have a cold water fitting, which is your inlet. So you're gonna bring your cold water into your cold water fitting. It's gonna go into the tank and heat up and then gonna come out. And this is gonna be your hot water, which I'll just use this blue pen to demonstrate. So once the cold water comes into your hot water heater, it's going to come out the hot, and now you have hot water. And now this is your 2 pipes that you're gonna run for the rest of your whole system. You got your hot water and your cold water. Simple enough. And also on a hot water tank, you have something called a relief valve. And you know what, I'll draw it down here, although it's really not on the bottom, but just to show it. So when your hot water tank gets really hot, all your hot water is heated up, it's gonna build pressure inside of this tank, and that pressure needs to get relieved if it is too high. Now, this is where your pressure relief valve comes in. It's set to a certain pressure to open up and allow water to come out. So when your hot water tank is really hot, it's going to have pressure buildup and it's going to leave your tank, and then you need to plumb that out the bottom of your bus. And that's going to allow the hot water to drip out, just as so. Now this is a single tank setup. If you have double tanks like we do, we have two 100-gallon tanks that are joined together, this is what you're going to do. We'll start on a nice new sheet of paper. Here is the first tank, and then you will have your second tank. So each tank is going to have its own fittings. You're going to have your gravity fill on each tank, and then you're going to have your 1/2 inch on the top, and then your 2 1/2 inch on the bottom. Alright, so here's our two tanks that are set up side by side. Now the way that we fill the tanks is, once again, we have our fill area for the outside. This is typically your gravity feed. This is your 1/2 inch right here. This 1/2 inch for the city pressure, which is how we fill our tanks, is going to come down, and from right here it's going to tee off. So you're going to have a tee. That's a horrible tee, but you guys will get the point. And then you plumb each side of the tee into each side of your tank. And so that is going to allow both sides to fill up at the same time. Now the way that we have it set up is that we're using our gravity fill as our vent. So once again, the vents come out, and once again, these tee together and then go into your vent. And now on the bottom 2 1/2 inch is where these are joined together with some PEX piping. So those are joined. This one on the right side, we have it set up to go into our valve. And like I said, this valve is to drain the tank. And because these are joined here, it's going to raise and lower at the same time because it's joined here. And then out this side, right here, this feeds the rest of your system. Okay, so you have your filter, you have your water pump, your accumulator tank, and so on, as we talked about before. But something to keep in mind, if you're going to be joining your tanks, each tank needs to have a vent, because they're filling and it's going to cut it off down here. So they need to have a vent on the top of the tank so they can vent properly without expanding and exploding on you. So this is a configuration, if you have two tanks, is how you're going to join them together. So guys, thank you so much for tuning into our plumbing video. I hope that after this video you have a better understanding of how to do some plumbing, how to connect all your PEX piping, and also how your water system is going to generally work. Once again, all the affiliate links are down below in the description, and I encourage you to watch another video on our channel if you like what we're doing. Thank you.